Settle into the hush. Imagine a darkened room and the pleasant crackle of a distant hearth, the soft breath of an evening wind moving across old stone. Tonight, we travel backward, quietly, gently, into a city that still breathes inside the layers of time. We will not hurry. We will not startle. We will let the past reveal itself like lamplight slowly brightening a corridor. The name of the city is Rome, and though its memory is often wrapped in brass fanfares and marching feet, we will visit it differently, in whispers and textures, in the domestic hours no triumphal arch ever shows. You begin, as everyone in Rome begins, not in a palace or a forum, but in a room of modest size, a fragment of a larger hive of life called an insula. Long before you open your eyes, you feel it, the quiet thrum of a building that holds many families and many dreams. The walls are cool this morning, faintly damp with the breath of the night. Your straw mattress crackles when you shift, each reed remembering a field somewhere beyond the city's walls. The blanket is simple, a coil of wool that recalls the shepherd's hand and the dyes of country flowers faded by years of washing. You become aware of a small square of light, more suggestion than window, set high where stone meets timber. Through that square, the morning's first pale ribbon arrives and floats dust motes like drifting seeds, slow and aimless. In the next room, someone clears a throat softly. There is a murmur of prayer from a neighbor, the name of a household god breathed like a secret. Farther down the corridor, a wooden ladle knocks against a clay cup. The building speaks in these pulses, a cough, a whispered argument, the scrape of sandals on plaster floors, the surprised coo of a pigeon who has ventured too close to human invention and now wonders how to depart. Yet it is not unpleasant. There is a sense that each small sound carries a thread, and all the threads together weave a morning. You sit up, gathering the blanket around your shoulders, and feel the room notice you, your shape, your breath, your warmth. Rome is a city of stone, but stone remembers. Beneath paint and plaster, beneath the grain of lintels and the rough push of reeds in the ceiling, lie the prints of many hands. You are not the first to sleep here, nor will you be the last. In this awareness there is comfort, a sense of belonging to a patient sequence of days. You rise and smooth your tunic, the fibers soft with use. Your possessions are simple, a cup, a comb, a small pouch with its careful knot. In another age these might be called meager. In this one they are essential, and the care you give them is a kind of prayer. You draw the comb through your hair once, twice, then let it rest. For now, the city calls more insistently than vanity. The insula's stairwell is a spine of wood and stone, its steps worn to a shallow sheen by hundreds of feet. When you place your soul upon the first stair, you are adding to a history of descent and ascent, of tradesmen and children, of midwives and messengers, all trusting this narrow rib of architecture to carry them into the day. You keep one hand upon the wall as you go, not for fear, but because the wall feels cool and real and somehow companionable. On the final landing, a door opens and a neighbor steps out with a clay pot carefully balanced, the morning task written clearly in her posture. You pass with a small nod, a courtesy as old as city life, not a conversation, not a claim, simply an acknowledgement that you share a rhythm. Outside the doorway, the air shifts cooler in the shade, brighter toward the street where the sun has already begun to wash the paving stones with a sober, steady light. Every city has a way of waking. Rome wakes in layers. First, the animal sounds, a rooster's measured announcement, the bleat of a tethered goat, the patient cluck and scratch of hens. Next, the merchants, their voices low at first as they pull back awnings and lift lids from baskets. Then the hammers, finding their pulse at a smithy's threshold, and the soft, almost musical slide of water as a fountain is cleaned, its basin releasing the night's small leaves. Finally, the words of the city itself, the greetings, the questions about bread and letters, the exchange of coins, and the laughter that requires no language at all rise like thin smoke and drift above alleys and arches. The fountain at the corner greets you with the simplest of Roman miracles, clear water issuing from a carved spout, flowing into a shallow limestone trough. You lean, not to claim its coolness greedily, but to meet it as one meets an old friend, with a certain decorum. Your fingertips cup a little and lift the morning to your lips. The first swallow is always the one that reminds you that a living chain of stone and pressure and distance has been measured and set so carefully that hills beyond the horizon assist your thirst without complaint. It is impossible, you think, to feel entirely alone in a city that can carry water over ridges and valleys to your hand. When the time comes to visit the public convenience, a necessity more ordinary than the Roman poets liked to admit, you find the place already quietly occupied by people who know that life is most companionable in shared tasks. There is conversation here as well, a gentle murmur that acknowledges the human animal and its needs without judgment. The benches are stone and the light is soft, filtered by a small oculus that has learned how to make even this mundane duty feel dignified. No one lingers. Courtesy is unspoken and polished by use. A brief nod, a brief wash, and the day continues. Breakfast is simple. A small heel of yesterday's bread, its crust like the rind of a hill baked all afternoon in the sun, a wedge of cheese with the scent of grass and patience, a sip of watered wine that carries a whisper of vines far away where dawn is even now slipping through trellises. You eat near the threshold of your building, not to watch, but to be watched by the day as though by a kindly elder. The bread softens against your tongue, and you think of fields, and of the farmer's hands that pressed seeds into the ground in a cool season when the wind carried distant cloud shadows over the soil. Bread is never only bread. It is seasons and the sun and the river's gift, all folded back into the body that eats it. When you step into the street, it is not with dread or feverish purpose, but with a slow appreciation. The street is a thought that the city had long ago and keeps repeating to itself, a path between buildings, a frame for market stalls, a narrow river of human intention flowing gently between stone banks. You move with it, shoulder to shoulder with citizens and visitors, with children who will remember this day later as a color or a sound. A baker passes with a basket, and the warm perfume that falls from the cloth is a kind of blessing. A scribe crosses your way with stylus and wax tablets, their surfaces a soft brown sheen like calm water. A potter's apprentice carries vessels nested as carefully as birds' eggs. It is not noisy, it is woven. Today you will work, as you always do, in a place where material meets design. Perhaps it is a construction site, stone blocks stacked like sleeping animals awaiting the careful cue to rise into a wall, or perhaps a workshop, where wood speaks under the persuasion of plane and chisel. In either case, the labor is not a contest, but a conversation. You consult with weight and grain, with the shy resistance of a new surface. Your tools are simple and clean. Their edges are small horizons, sharp as first light. When you lift a hammer, there is no rush in the gesture. You rest its face upon the nail like a greeting, and then, only then, invite the nail to join the grain. The sound that follows is not a harsh clamor, but a measured knocking, a polite request made repeatedly until the wood assents. From time to time, you pause and look up. Above you, Rome is a geometry of light and shadow. Strings of laundry accept the breeze like modest sails. A cat steps along a ledge with the gravity of a magistrate. Over everything, the sky, high, untroubled, a lid of lapis that makes the sandstone buildings glow a shade warmer. There is no hurry to finish. What you make today will be used by hands you will never see. To know that is to be content. By the late morning, the city has reached its comfortable stride. Stalls are open, and their colors figs like damp garnets, olives with the sheen of river stones, greens splayed like open palms, compose a map that the eye reads easily. You buy nothing yet, you are gathering not goods, but impressions. At a corner, a group of boys share a loaf, breaking it with the concentration of acolytes. An old woman combs her granddaughter's hair, each stroke deliberate, each not persuaded gently into compliance. Nearby, a marble fragment, once part of somebody's grand design, now serves as a bench. Rome wastes nothing, it simply translates. At midday, when the sun has turned honey thick and the air seems to rest upon the shoulders of the city, you join the others in searching for shade. There is always a loggia, always an alley that becomes a tunnel of relief, always the benign mercy of an awning or a plane tree with leaves like green hands. You sit and divide your small meal, Another portion of bread softened with a trickle of oil, some olives whose bitter edge awakens the mouth, a wedge of something brined and friendly. The watered wine is cool, and it carries no mischief. It is simply a way to ask the body to continue its agreeable work of being alive. If there is a bathhouse nearby, and in Rome there is always a bathhouse nearby, you allow yourself the luxury of the thermi. Not for show, not as a diversion, but as a ritual of belonging. The baths are a little city within the city. They understand the day better than any clock. You enter the vestibule, where voices blend like distant surf and move with a gentle procession through rooms of increasing warmth. The air smells faintly of eucalyptus and cedar and of stone warmed slow WLY until it yields its chill. In the tepidarium, heat wraps around you like a kindly shawl. In the caldarium, it speaks in a different language, more insistent, yet never harsh. You do not hurry. You let your breath do the counting, in and out and in again. Water glows upon marble rinns. Light makes gentle prisms and droplets that cling to an arched window. When you sit near the edge of a pool, the surface adjusts to you and you to it until both are quiet. A bather nearby rubs a drop of oil into a shoulder with a care that seems almost ceremonial. An attendant moves with practiced ease, carrying a strigil that has known the contours of 1,000 backs. There is a sweetness here, a civic kindness, strangers sharing the same element, the same warmth, the same impulse to be clean and at ease in their own bodies. When you leave, your skin remembers the touch of water like a pleasant rumor. Return now to the street, where afternoon has deepened the colors. The gold leaf on a sign front seems to exhale. The terracotta pots along the sill have warmed to the same gentle temperature as bread. Your work resumes without complaint. Time is no longer something to be conquered, but something that curls soft loops around your tusks. Messages float upon it, a child's laughter from an upper story, the faint ring of a chisel upon stone, the call of a vendor who has learned, by ancestral instinct, exactly how far and how gently the human voice can carry a syllable. From where you stand, you can just see the rooflines beyond the forum. Even at a distance, they have the noble humility of useful things. Columns lift their pale trunks into the afternoon, not in boast, but in service. Their shadows form cool rooms upon the paving where dogs sleep with their noses on their paws. Statues hold forever the thoughts they were given, and pigeons, unreverent and ever practical, accept their brows as perches. If a priest passes, you notice not pride but order in his step, as though his sandals are remembering a certain sentence of prayer that they must speak with each pace. The gods are present here in the oldest way, as habits that keep humanity kind. A courier arrives at your workplace with a small clay-sealed message. You accept it with the formality the object requests and break the seal. It is a short note, an order for materials to be ready by the end of the week, but even this small scrap carries the comforting weight of continuity. A need expressed, a task assigned, hands to fulfill it, hands to receive it. Civilization is made from these circles of intention that widen and never feel like ripples from a stone, but like rings of a tree, slow, patient, sure. When the sun leans toward its decline, you allow yourself to walk. Not because the day has rushed you, there has been no rushing, but because walking is the proper way to honor a city that has given you its water, its shade, its fellowship. You trace a route between market and fountain, between shrine and woodworking yard, between the baker's hearth and the quiet corner where a laurel puts up new leaves with a surprising tenderness. Along the way, you pass households performing their own evening preludes, a mother rinsing figs in a basin, a grandfather teaching a child how to fold a cloth correctly, a young man measuring out a handful of lentils and then adding one more, as if to please an invisible witness. For a time, you stand near a small temple, no grand affair, where the steps have learned and repeated the pattern of daily feet. There is a niche with a worn relief that once showed a god's serene profile and now shows, more than anything, the memory of touch. Candles have left thin crescents of wax on the stone. Ashes from past offerings gather in so gentle a drift that they resemble dust in a room no one has disturbed for years. A woman sets a cluster of herbs upon the ledge and closes her eyes. The city breathes out and in again. If there is a lesson here, it is that the ordinary, when repeated with care, becomes ceremonial. Rome knows this. The lighting of a lamp, the folding of bread, the washing of hands, each small gesture has a way of slowing the heart and smoothing the mind. You find yourself growing quieter without any effort at all. The evening will not demand a spectacle from you. It will ask only that you notice how the day changes garments. Your supper is humble and companionable, a bowl of grain porridge softened with a spoon of oil, a few greens, their edges curled from the day's warmth, a slice of cheese that tastes of fields, and a fig, perfectly ripe, that dissolves into sweetness without ambition. You do not eat quickly. You let each bite tell you its story. The damp cool of dawn in a kitchen garden, the brief hum of bees near blossoms, the hands that milked and set and waited and wrapped. The watered wine now is less a drink than a signal, a way of telling the body that its hour of rest approaches and that everything demanding can be put gently away like tools wiped and hung in their familiar places. Some evenings, you venture farther, not to the great stadiums where noise rises like heat, but to the edges of public squares where philosophers speak in phrases that sound like stones being carefully arranged into a path. They use the simplest words, and yet each one seems to carry the weight of something smoothed and tested by long usage. Virtue, habit, temperance, peace. You do not need to remember them. It is enough to feel the cadence, to sense that language itself can be a kind of shelter. There is music, too, if you choose to seek it. A small tangle of notes from a reed pipe, a rhythm tapped upon a drum skin that keeps time with the slow stride of the evening. A singer's voice threads between the colonnades and returns to you mixed with the faint perfume of lamp oil and baked clay. Children drowse against parents' shoulders. An old friend of yours tells a story too familiar to require attention, and that very familiarity is restful. The mind, recognizing the path ahead, relaxes its vigilance and lets the feet follow. And when you return at last to your insula, the stairwell greets you as it greeted you this morning as a companion. Lamps glimmer along the corridor, their light thin as silk. Behind doors, small conversations close with phrases softened by sleep. Your room receives you, its walls now warm with the day's held light. You wash your hands slowly, a ceremonial gesture that feels older than any city, and draw the blanket over your legs. You will sleep soon, but not before you let your thoughts wander along the city's quiet arteries. You imagine the aqueduct outside the gates, its even arches walking across the land like a sentence too calm to explain and too evident to require explanation. You imagine the road stones, fitted so closely that weeds cannot remember where to grow. You imagine a little boy in a room like yours, telling his shoulder to be brave and his breath to be soft, and then making good on both instructions. You imagine bakers raking embers into patterns for tomorrow's loaves, and a shepherd, far away on a hillside, pulling his cloak tighter as the stars begin to count themselves. Night in Rome is not the silence of a forest, but the gentler quiet of a library, each dwelling a book, each window a page, each page placed back upon its shelf without being fully closed. You can hear, beneath the few remaining sounds, the larger hush of the city's trust in its own keeping. The walls no longer feel cool. They carry a whisper of the heat your body has given them, and they return it in gratitude. Here, at the soft center of the night, memory expands. You think of a detail from the morning, the glint of water at the fountain's lip, and it opens like a small door onto a larger garden. The patient geometry of aqueducts laid carefully against the horizon, the measured drop that makes movement possible. The masons who set each stone with the serenity of people who knew that, if they were careful, their work would outlast their names in the most benevolent way. You think, too, of the path your feet traced. At each corner where you turn today, someone once turned and thought as you are thinking now, that life, even when modest, even when circled by simple tasks, can feel ample if it is timed to kindness. Perhaps tomorrow you will visit the baths again. Perhaps you will stand at the edge of the tepidarium and watch how steam writes its brief scripture upon the air, letters that nobody reads and everyone understands. Perhaps you will pass the small temple once more and straighten a sprig of rosemary a child has left askew. Perhaps there will be a market stall selling honey, and you will accept the trader's invitation to taste. The drop will rest upon your tongue, sunlight in liquid form, and for a moment you will hear a countryside you do not see, the frail thunder of bees among blossoms, barley fields letting go of wind. You will take a little home in a clay jar and keep it by the lamp as if it were a season preserved. Now let the room grow larger than its walls. Let it become a chamber that joins many chambers, a thread in a woven cloth that wraps an entire city in calm. Somewhere, a friend you have not yet met is blowing out a lamp with the same tenderness you bring to this closing moment. Somewhere, an elderly couple turns the cover gently over their knees and smiles, unfinished sentences completing themselves in shared silence. Somewhere, a baker's apprentice yawns so wide that the morning has already placed a finger in the door and promised to return. You close your eyes and the city rearranges itself behind your lids. The stair, the fountain, the market, the bath, the road, the temple, the table, the room. No crowding, no clamor, only the soft logic of belonging. The day releases you as a kind hand releases a bird. The night receives you with patience. Breath lengthens and the world becomes grain by grain, stone by stone, the most comfortable bed. Sleep then, in the oldest capital of the quiet heart. Rome will keep watch. Its arches, its lamps, its gentle traffic of thoughts moving slowly through streets where even the shadows learn courtesy, these will stand sentinel outside your dreams. And when the dreams arrive, they will do what Rome has always done when it is most itself. They will hold the ordinary close and make of it something tender and enduring. Drift now. Hear the far-off fountain. Smell the faint thread of lamp oil cooled by night air. Feel the straw ease beneath your shoulder like the bank of a river that has learned your name. Tomorrow, the stair will carry you again. The day will open like a folded cloth, and you will find at the city's heart what you are finding now, a calm as old as stone, generous as bread, and clear as water walking over arches toward your waiting hands. The ember glow of the imagined hearth lingers, and the night opens like a calm book. We return to the slow city, to corridors of stone and the kind of daylight that arrives as a courtesy, not a surprise. The morning you left behind in part one has ripened into a Roman midday, unhurried and sure of itself, as if the hours were clay in the hands of a patient potter. We will keep the same tempo, the breath-long pace of a lullaby, and move gently through streets and stories, letting history fold itself into comfort. You step outside and the air is already arranged, sandstone and lime, the faint sweetness of a baker's oven, a teasing whisper of crushed bay leaves under someone's heel. A fountain waits at the corner, its lip worn smooth by thousands of cups and the kindness of passing hands. The water glides out as if reciting by heart a sentence it has spoken for centuries, hill to channel, arch to conduit, conduit to spout, spout to palm. You rinse your clay cup and drink. The taste is clear and faintly stony, as though the water remembers ledges and shadowed rills. When you lift your head, you notice the aqueduct far off, walking across the morning with its procession of arches, calm creatures who never hurry. There is business to attend to, ordinary and fine. Your building has no private arrangements for the necessities of the body. That is work you do with neighbors. The latrina is bright with day, its benches of stone cool and honest. People enter with the simple grace of those who know that humanity is most itself when it sets pride aside and allows routine to become ritual. The murmur there is low and companionable, the light softened by an opening in the ceiling. A boy carries a bucket with two careful hands. An older woman steadies the handle and smiles. Vinegar in a basin reminds you that even the humblest acts have their small ceremonies. You wash with a measured splash, and you leave feeling lighter in a way that has nothing to do with laughter and everything to do with relief arranged in dignity. The street has taken up its music again, sandal on stone, will on flag, a call in Oscan answered in Latin, a dog's quiet yip, a loom's thrum behind a half-open door. Markets float out from lanes like little islands of color. Figs hold a violet dusk inside their skins. Olives sit dark and reflective like river pebbles after rain. A jar of honey shows the sun in suspension. Bread breathes. Someone has set out garlands of rosemary and thyme, green curls unwinding as if telling a story to the air. A fishmonger lifts a palm in greeting. His stall smells of salt and distance, a harbor folded into an alley. Children carry small errands in both hands, proud as kings. Everyone belongs. Work awaits. Perhaps you shape clay today, spinning the wheel with your foot, centering the soft earth that traveled here from a quiet bank along the Tiber. You keep your wrist steady. The lump, undecided at first, learns from your assurance and lengthens into a jar whose shoulders will someday hold oil like evening light. Or perhaps you mend a wall, persuading stones to find their old friends again with a filler of lime that smells faintly of the shore. The trowel's shiver is a friendly thing. A mason's line hums in the breeze. Under a shed roof, a carpenter grades his planes with the tenderness of one who knows that wood is a former tree, a repository of wind, rain, the pressure of years. It must be asked, not commanded. In all these places, craft is a form of breath in, attend, out release. Noon draws a narrower shade across the ground. You follow the city's habit of kindness toward the body and look for a portico, a tree, a canvas lean-to where fruit sellers have learned the exact angle that turns sun into usefulness. Lunch is a modest piece of bread softened with oil, a few olives, greens rinsed in fountain water, and a sip of wine diluted until it tastes mostly of vineyard air and memory. The cup sweats on your palm. The city hums without insistence, as though reminding you that digestion is a civic good. You consider the bath and let yourself be guided by habit. The thermi are a republic of warmth and water. You surrender coins at the entrance and step into a world where stone has learned to be kind to skin. The frigidarium, coolness like a fresh page. The tepidarium, a room that has been holding a hug for you since morning. The caldarium, a persuasion of heat that asks the shoulders to lower, the jaw to unclench, the heart to lengthen its stride and then to slow. Oil is poured into your palm, a thin line of sunlight, and spread along the arm with the same attention you might give to smoothing linen on a bed. A strigil scrapes away the day's small dust, the way a careful friend might lift a burr from the hem of your cloak. Voices float, never striking. Steam writes a sentence overhead and erases it softly. You think, not for the first time, that cities are at their best when they have invented ways to help strangers rest. Outside again, the air feels newly invented. You move past workshops where dyes stain fingers like berries, where leather hangs in measured slabs and smells of pasture and rain. A scribe leans over his wax tablet, the stylus whispering as he pulls characters out of silence. He pauses now and then, not to think, but to listen to the shape of the next word forming. A girl counts on her fingers, knots thread, counts again, nods to herself. An old man sits with a basket of pebbles and sorts them by color, perhaps no reason beyond the pleasure of arranging the world into small harmonies. Someone has set a little altar near an intersection, a place where footsteps braid. The Laura's household guardians stand in miniature, their carved clothes flowing as if caught in a breeze no one else can feel. 2 sprigs of laurel, a pinch of flour, a whisper, the ingredients by which fear is tempered into gratitude. Farther on, a shrine to Vesta keeps a flame singing the way a mother hums while folding linen. A young acolyte tends the fire with both the solemnity of office and the casual grace of practice. Ritual here does not bristle, it breathes. You leave a tiny offering of thanks for passage, as others did yesterday and will tomorrow, and your coin makes a patient note in the bowl. The Romans speak of health in 4 humors, but they tend to you with herbs that know your body as well as any philosophy. A physician stirs a decoction in a clay cup, honey thick as late afternoon, vinegar sharp as morning air, thyme and rue and a pinch of ground seed that smells of clean fields. He places a hand on your wrist not as a judge but as a listener, counting the pulse like a poet counts syllables. He tells you to bathe, to walk, to eat simply, to sleep where a breeze can reach you. He knows the names of pain the way a sailor knows winds. Outside his door, a child's scraped knee is blessed with a smear of honey and a soft cloth. The child watches, wide-eyed, as if a miracle were being performed. In truth, a small one is. Afternoon leans into its longer shadows. A procession of women passes with baskets balanced high, woven bottoms side smooth by use. They carry vegetables, letters, the day's gossip in well-behaved folds. A bronze worker polishes a lamp until it carries a tiny sun where the wick will rest. Tanners laugh in a way that says, We smell of work and we are not ashamed. A storyteller takes a seat on the base of a column and begins, voice level, hands quiet, the tale itself doing the moving. People pause without realizing they have paused. The story threads them together for a few breaths and then lets them go. This is how cities hold themselves, with threads so gentle you only notice them when you are tired and they lift you. As evening begins to play in the edges of things, you think of dinner. It is not an event, but a return. A pot waits, and into it you coax pulse, a porridge as old as hope, swollen with water into something kind to stomach and heart. A few leafed herbs, a crumble of cheese, a spoon of oil with the taste of hillside, and the meal becomes generous. If you are fortunate, a fig has kept its promise to be sweet, or a neighbor shares a handful of chickpea fritters whose rough edges remember a pan and the hour before sunset. Wine, again watered, is a companion, not a master. There is talk, but it is the talk that belongs to tables. How is that task? Did you see the stray cat sleep between the pots? Have the swallows returned to the eaves? The answers are small and entire. Beyond your door, Rome dresses herself for night. Torches flicker, cutting curtains of shadow into long, soft strips that move with the air. The forum loses its speaking voice and keeps only its posture. Columns watch over slow footfalls. An old musician finds a bench and lifts a reed pipe to his lips. He plays not for money, but to keep a tune from fading. It has the shape of the river at dusk. A pair of friends pass, discussing the shape of virtue the way gardeners discuss weather, calmly, knowing both will return whether called or not. Order carries the night. The vigilas make their rounds with small lamps and easy steps. They are not stern, they are steady. They pause at doorposts to feel for heat under a lintel. Fire's eagerness is respected here as one respects a guest who loves a good story too much and must be sent to bed at a decent hour. A ladder leans ruddy in a courtyard. A bucket brigade is a kind of neighborhood pact. Even in sleep, the city minds the city. When you climb the stair once more, the wood greets your feet like an old friend, creak in the same places, silence in others, the music of a known path. Your room has gathered the day's warmth and folded it neatly. You draw water from a jar and wash your hands and face with the deliberation of one who knows that cleanliness is an indoor breeze. You place the comb where it belongs, the cup where it belongs, the day where it belongs, behind you and also within you, like a good story's last sentence. Sleep approaches softly, but before it covers you, the mind has a little room left for legends, the gentle kind, the ones that keep watch rather than startling the heart. And so the city loosens its hold, and the map of our wandering expands beyond its walls, across plains and mountains, to a land where the air carries dust with dignity and horses read the wind the way scholars read a line of verse. In that far country, imagine a princess born to a house that measured the world by its horizons rather than its halls. Call her Rodogun if you like. The name changes with the tongue, but let the shape of her life remain. A woman of Parthian blood whose presence sat easily on a saddle and at a council table. She grew among tents that opened to the morning the way eyes open to kindness, among maps drawn in lines of rivers and ranges rather than in bricks. She watched decisions made by listening more than speaking. She learned that hair, braided or unbound, could be language. When unrest rose like dust in a distant province and wove itself into stubborn banners on city walls, she took a vow that sounded simple and felt immense, not to smooth her hair, not to sweeten her own reflection, until quiet returned. It was not a threat, it was patience dressed plainly. The vow moved through the camps like a breeze. Men and women smiled to hear it and stood a little straighter. The princess rode without ornament, and dust settled upon her like a second garment. Her tent smelled of leather and ink. At night, by lamplight, she met with captains. They placed their fingers on maps and treated roads like sentences to be read slowly. No council shouted, no council ran. Cities are persuaded by time as often as by iron. The work was not a single day's work. It was months of the world turning, of gates opening at dawn and closing at dusk, of letters crossing deserts and returning with the word soon. She did not camp apart. She ate what her soldiers ate, a lentil stew that remembered gardens in its steam, flatbread puffed by fire soft talk, a date that carried afternoon sunlight inside its skin. Her hair grew heavy with travel, a quiet banner of resolve. The men who guarded the night fires looked up from time to time and saw not a jewel in a shadowed tent, but a companion unadorned, hushing the tent flaps with a hand when wind tried to boast. Cities, being living things, tire of wearing armor. In their own time, the stubborn ones sighed and released their grip. Walls were mended, not broken. Streets were swept. Leaders who had chased noise learned to prize quiet. The last holdout listened to hunger and to the distant murmur of markets resuming and loosened, and let the morning in. When the work had settled, no trumpet, no drum, just the satisfying answer of locks turned from inside. Rotogun walked into a courtyard and called for water. Servants came with basins and oils. Soldiers gathered at a respectful distance. The air smelled of cedar and soap. It took a long time to undo what time and dust had done, and that was exactly right. Each knot was patience becoming release. Each rinse was a river making a promise to the land. No one spoke. The splashing sounded like a fountain learning a new song. When her hair lay in clean ropes across her shoulders, she smiled without owning the moment. She stood, not more royal and not less merely, and entirely, herself, the vow completed without spectacle. Later, when she visited the towns that had fretted, she moved through them on foot, neither to be adored nor to be feared, asking shopkeepers how they measured cloth, asking children where the good figs grew, reminding everyone with her presence that stillness is a kind of strength too. If she returned to court with triumph, she wore it as people wear shade on a hot day, with gratitude and without display. History, not loving plain quiet, left her with fewer lines than she earned. But across evenings like this one, her story survives as a candle whose flame does not chatter, a vow kept, a season of dust turned into a lesson about gentleness holding a city together. From Parthia's quiet tents, listen now to the long grasses beyond the Caspian, where hooves write their swift calligraphy on the earth. There, the steppe opens in all directions like a sky on the ground. The people who live upon it are kin to wind and distance. Among them walks a queen called Talmiris in languages that carry sun on their bowels. She is remembered as one who would not let her people be measured by a stranger's ruler. But in the telling we choose for the night, let her be, first, a woman who knew the names of stars and horses and herbs that calm a fever. As a girl, she learned to ride by listening to a mare's breathing and letting her own match it until fear forgot its own name. When power from the south arrived with polite banners and grand suggestions, the queen answered with courtesy, "We are already whole." The steppe language is mostly verbs. It values motion and proportion. Queens there did not wear distance like armor. They wore it like a cloak to share. The tales you have heard in other places mention battles. Let us leave them in the dust they disturbed. What matters for sleep is that the people remain themselves. The queen's campfires were banked each night. Smoke rose like threads into skycloth that never tears. Children slept near saddles. Elders told riders where water sang beneath the reeds. The visitors from the south turned back to their own roads, and the wind closed the path behind them with its infinite, kind brush. Talmiris' name became an ever-returning sound among her people, spoken low by torchlight when new mothers needed a steady story, repeated over the neck of a nervous colt to make him accept a palm, set into the weft of songs so that the youngest could tug and find it there. Caravans carried the name outward, and scribes in marble cities wrote it down with their neat pens, surprised at how gently it insisted upon itself. The queen grew older, as queens must, and the steppe kept her, as the steppe keeps everything in balance, labor for rest, summer for winter, grief for joy, and the tenderness that follows. If stones were raised for her, they were low and felted with lichen. If none were raised, the grass has done that work with equal grace, standing tall each spring, kneeling each snow, and always returning. And now, because the night has its own industry, let us move from horses to small wings and the low, even hum that sometimes seems to be the ground thinking aloud. These, too, are part of the human story, and their work has been a lullaby since people first listened. In the Nile's long green ribbon, where day begins by stroking reeds into music, there were hives laid out like a poem, clay tubes set on their sides, warmed by the same sun that gilded the river. Keepers learned when to move them, floating them on boats to follow blossoms north as the flood retreated. Smoke from dried herbs coaxed the bees into calm, and careful hands slipped honeycombs free like pages from a book that keeps rewriting itself. Honey gathered in a bowl looked like the Nile at sunset. Doctors there tucked it into ointments, priests stirred it into offerings, mothers pressed it onto bread with their thumbs. Wax warmed in the palms and remembered every impression, then remembered none, the perfect servant. They said bees were born from the sun god's tears, gold becoming sweetness, sorrow becoming medicine. That sounds exactly right. Between the twin rivers farther east, laws were set down that did not forget the hive. If bees were led astray, restitution was measured. If honey was taken, fairness returned it in jars or silver. Temple gardens held shady corners for woven hives, and rooftops learned to wear clusters of baskets lightly. Wax-sealed tablets that hid words between ridges of clay. Later, those words would be discovered intact, still tasting faintly of meadow. When the sun fell across those squares, it warmed not only brick, but a kind of kindness that wrote itself into codes, the small being cared for because the small keeps the large alive. In the north and west, where hills lean into seas, another people watched bees and gave them a place in their lit candles and their language. Priestesses were called by the bee's own name, Melissa, and moved through groves where laurel and olive made a green light above their heads. In their telling, a hive is not merely a box, but a city with its own conduct and devotion. A philosopher bent over a wax tablet and wondered aloud why order pleased the mind. The bees did not answer, which is their way of agreeing. He wrote what he saw. Some bees gather, some build, some keep the doorway, some seem to decide. There is a center. He guessed it a king because the world he knew liked kings. The bees, knowing otherwise, forgave him. Bakers there drizzled honey over cheese and bread, and in the afternoons of festivals, cakes shone like small altars you could eat. The Romans, as they often did, made the craft wide and steady. Highs of cork in warm places, of hollowed logs where forests leaned close, of straw where fields rolled and sang, each kind suited to its weather like a good cloak. Estate ledgers kept honey with the seriousness they gave to wheat. Gardeners planted thyme between rows so that the bees would bring the hills home in their feet. A keeper knew the weight of a full comb by hand and by ear. Honey speaks a thick note when it is ready. Smoke jars carried a whisper of oregano. The hive sighed and let themselves be touched. Wax, poured and cooled, became tablets to catch a child's first letters or the daily arithmetic of grain and oil. In kitchens, honey thinned with water became molesome, the glass catching a gold that is neither boastful nor shy. Medicine across these places nodded in one direction where bees were concerned. A physician could close a wound with honey as if tucking a child into bed. It kept the bad things out. It told the skin to knit peacefully. It tasted of fields if tears reached the tongue. Vinegar and honey together, oxymel, soothed a throat and reasoned with lingering coughs. Travelers mixed honey into water when the river's trust could not be guaranteed. The drink tasted of safety. Here and there, in rooms where the dead were dressed with respect, honey preserved the last shape of a beloved face while the living learned how to say their versions of farewell, some loud, some gentle, all necessary. Tools for keeping bees were few and beloved. A knife that knew how to separate wax without rudeness, a basket that breathed, a smoker that remembered the right way to sigh. The most important tool was time, the second was patience, the third was a listening that isn't done with ears. Hives reward the unhurried hand, they answer calm with calm. In winter, keepers felt the boxes and spoke to them, nonsense sounds that were really blessings. In spring, they watched the air for the lace of swarms and followed with a ladder and a quiet heart, returning colonies to boxes lined with a small offering of wax and sweetness. Children learned early where to stand and how to look so as not to excite. Their reward was a finger dipped into a comb and the knowledge that labor can be luminous. Across centuries, honey stored in sealed jars waited patiently, unchanged. like a thought that remains true. When some such jars were opened long after those who sealed them had become their own kind of sweetness and memory, the honey's light still flowed. To taste it was to nod to the dead and say, "You chose well." Return now, with bees' music in your ear, to the room in Rome where your blanket holds a shallow bowl of warmth for you. The city outside has turned down its voice another notch. The forum is now a posture only. The last torches are embers. The day was full, but it was also measured, and because of that you are not worn thin. You lie upon straw that answers your weight with the docility of a field in autumn. The soft hole in the wall that serves as window has become a square of night whose stars are set the way a careful hand sets stitches, even enduring. It is possible, lying here, to feel the aqueduct far away, speaking its quiet grammar to the hills, arch and span, span and fall, fall and flow. It is possible to imagine Rotogun unbinding a last knot, steam rising like a benediction. Tamir is standing at the door of her tent to watch dawn pour milk blue over the grass. A keeper in Egypt lifting the lid from a tube hive as gently as a mother lifts a sleeping child's hand to free it from a wrinkle in the sheet. All of these motions are calm. They are the movements by which the world agrees to be livable. You will dream soon, and your dreams will not startle. They will be like the market at first light, like a sorted tray of pebbles, like a reed pipe in a portico where swallows fold the edges of the evening. If a door opens in your sleep, it will be to a room you already love. If a voice speaks, it will be counting something you understand: loaves, lamp wicks, steps from the bed to the basin and back. The city will keep watch as cities learn to do. The gods will accept the small coin of your breathing and spend it on your behalf for another morning. Let the blanket's weight be a gentle law. Let the mattress rehearse the old conversation with your bones. Here, and peace here. The last thing you hear is water far away and very near the fountain, the bath, the cup rinsed and set to dry. You become the cup. The night fills you and empties you and then sets you carefully upon the sill to wait for light. And when light comes, it will do so bravely and quietly, as Rome always prefers. The insula will wake like a book you placed face down and now open again. The stair will welcome your feet. The fountain will recite. The baker will bless the air with warmth. The city will carry you the way a hive carries its queen, not upon a throne, but upon a shared understanding of where to go and why. And you, still wrapped in the gentleness of this telling, will take your place among artisans and elders, children and keepers of small flames, the long, unstartled story continuing. Sleep now. The hearth has lowered itself to a glow that is mostly memory. Bees hum at a distance that is really within. Horses walk the edge of your thoughts and bow their heads. Vows kept ripple out like rings upon a still basin. The law of the city is kindness arranged in stone. The night arranges itself around you as a mother arranges a sheet, corners squared, fabric smoothed, everything in its right measure. Rest inside the great patience of time. The world has practiced these hours for you. It will keep practicing until morning, and then again, the way a fountain keeps writing yes over stone, forever. The hearthlight in your imagination deepens to a steady amber, and the air around it grows warm with a kindness that asks nothing of you except to breathe. The story opens again where it left off, with Rome resting and rising in the same motion, breath in, breath out, its streets remembering the day gently as night places a calm hand upon each lintel. We will keep to the slow cadence that sleep loves, measured steps along old stones, soft glances into courtyards and workshops, long pauses by fountains where the city's memory flows without end. Nothing here startles. Everything yields. We move through the Roman world as a traveler moves through a cloister, unhurried, attentive, and grateful for the company of time. Morning gathers itself by degrees. First, the hush before birds speak. Then, an outline of rooftops, temple pediments, and tiled eaves drawn with a charcoal line against pale sky. Finally, a gentle light that does not fall so much as it settles on lintels and thresholds, on the shoulders of statues, on baskets left ready beside doors. The insula wakes with its accustomed tact. A neighbor pulls a bolt softly. Another sets a pot upon a charcoal tray with a careful ring of the rim against clay. A child tests the first step and discovers the staircase is where it has always been, one more reassurance in a world designed to remember. At the fountain near your turning, the stone is cool, the water cooler. Its lip has been smoothed by thousands of mornings. You lean and drink. The taste is both mineral and meadow, both hill and conduit, as though the story of distance has been told to the tongue. The aqueduct beyond the walls carries itself with an unshowy dignity, arches walking across the fields the way a good sentence walks through thought, balanced, patient, inevitable. A mason cleaning the trough nods to you with the familiarity that generosity learns from repetition. His brush lifts leaves into a little pile. The leaves accept their new pattern without complaint. Breakfast is a small ceremony. Stale bread softened with a thumbprint of oil, a knuckle of cheese with the memory of pasture in its salt, a sip of wine stretched into innocence with water. You eat at the threshold because thresholds are honest places, half in, half out, perfectly suited to beginnings. A vendor with a wicker tray passes, and the objects upon it glow as though the sun has found its favorite shelf, figs with their petty stars, olives keeping the color of old rivers, a jar of honey that appears to hold a late afternoon in suspension. He calls softly because morning is a guest that prefers low voices. Work collects itself around hands and tools with the intimacy of long friendship. There is plaster to be mixed and coaxed onto a wall that has decided to remember light more faithfully. There is timber to be planed until the surface reads under the palm like silk taught to be wood. There is clay to be centered on the wheel, and there is the learned stillness of the potter's core that teaches the clay a new axis. In the shipwright's quarter near the river, oak ribs lean like the skeleton of a whale the land has adopted. Copper nails wait in waxed cups, and pitch warms until it flows, smelling faintly of forests and sun. Smiths tend their fires as shepherds tend flocks. They keep the heat gathered, calm, responsive, singing metal into forms that will serve for decades. Rome is not only brick and decree, it is bread. Along the Tiber quays, the grain of Egypt comes home as if returning to a kitchen. Barges, heavy-bellied with harvest, ride low and steady. The miller's quarters wake to their stone-lipped murmurs, querns rolling with a dependable song, sacks stacking like soft blocks of pale gold. The Annona, the city's promise to itself, moves along in measured scoops, ledger lines, and the friendly inspection of hands. Bakers receive flour the way altars receive flowers, without fuss and with gratitude. In their ovens, loaves think themselves into form, the crusts blistering into shades of autumn hedges. Later, long before noon, the streets carry the perfume of uncut slices, and all Rome stands a little taller at the scent. Beyond the market, into quieter lanes, a collegium of craftsmen meets to decide ordinary matters that together amount to a civilization. What fair price feels like this month, which apprentice should be shown the finer edge, whether the festival garlands will hang from lintel or beam. Their talk is slow and concrete, measured out like barley. They speak of hands and hours, of wood and wool, of coppa's willingness and limestone's patience. When they part, it is with the assurance that the city can trust them to keep shaping its usefulness into beauty. Across town, under a portico whose shade is a complete thought, children recite their letters to a teacher with ink on his hands and regard in his eyes. Wax tablets catch the stylus scribe and release it again. Whenever the wooden frame is turned, a new page waits with the same optimism. The children learn to take breath between lines, to leave space around meaning, to copy not only words, but their posture. Outside, a sundial poses its slender finger upon the plaza and points in the same way it pointed yesterday, a calm arithmetic of light and stone. When a cloud passes, time rests. When the cloud goes on, time resumes with a nod. The salutatio still opens doors in the early hours. At a patron's house, clients arrive in tunics made tidy with water and habit. They wait with the agreeable patience of people who understand the way favors travel. When the door swings open, it is not majesty that greets them, but a steward who has perfected the art of kindness at the speed of a household. A few words, a small purse, a promise to speak for someone's son when the guild votes, a name offered like a bridge, they all pass hand to hand without noise. In the street afterward, Those who received and those who gave are nearly indistinguishable. Patronage here is not a trumpet. It is a net woven fine enough to hold even the small fish. Midday honors the human body by asking less of it. Arcades lean their shade into the streets. Shop awnings in ochre and rust relax their pleats. In courtyards, fountains count seconds for those who have put their tools down. Plip, plip, the slowest metronome. You step into the thermi with coins ready and a willingness to be ordinary among others. The apoditarium holds its bench like a friend's lap. The tepidarium is a warm syllable. The caldarium is a warm sentence. The frigidarium is a clean new paragraph that sets the mind right. In the palestra, men move their limbs in arcs that look, from above, like the drawing of amphory, shoulders broadening into handles, heads the bays of a calm sea. Oil is poured, not lavishly but precisely, then gathered again with a strigil that does not judge. The attendant's hands are deft and almost invisible. His art is to leave no trace but comfort. You dress again in a tunic that feels newly invented. If you choose a quiet walk, the city offers libraries as a form of mercy. The bibliotheca is a cool throat of a building, its niches full of rolled voices. Catalogs hang beside shelves like maps of a country everyone is welcome to visit. A librarian with a reed pen behind his ear nods you toward a place at a table. The leather lashings that bind the scroll you choose are smooth, where many fingers have agreed to open them. Inside, a thought from a century ago steps down from its lines, as if from a modest carriage, and sits across from you kindly. You read slowly because the words are not running away. They have time, and so do you. Outside, the street continues at its own pace, and you understand that even a bustling city can give its noise to silence when silence asks politely. Afternoon is a painter with a longer brush. It stains the walls warmer, deepens the blue between columns, polishes bronze until small suns gather in handles and lampstands. In a mosaic atelier, tesserae are sorted into dishes, river greens, roof reds, wheat golds, sky whites. The master's thumb is stained with mortar. The apprentice's forearms carry the day in fine dust. They place cubes so small they are nearly seeds, and yet, as they press each into its bed, birds are born, vines climb, waves fold. The art is both patient and immediate. The picture appears line by line as if the floor were remembering a garden it once walked through. The master praises quiet work and asks for cleaner lines not with scold, but with example. Farther along, a painter sets a shallow bowl of pigment on a plank and molds it with water. Malachite becomes leaf, cinnabar becomes pomegranate, soot becomes shade. On a wall newly coated with wet plaster, a scene blooms while the surface is still thirsty. A table with pears, a mask that smiles, a border of ivy that believes it has always grown there. Fresco is the art of agreeing with time's pace. Paint too soon and it scumbles. Too late and it sulks. Paint when the wall is listening, and the wall keeps the secret for centuries. If you ask the city for an errand with a longer horizon, the cursus publicus will oblige. Couriers change horses in stations strung along the roads like beads, their relay smooth as a hand-to-hand passing of a cup. Milestones mark distances as graciously as old friends mark years, without astonishment, without complaint. A map is a form of trust between places. The roads cross mountains as if they were conversational pauses, and rivers as if they were commas. On such roads, a traveler can learn a new kind of rest that happens while moving. Toward evening, the harbor at Ostia hums in a key that is always forgiving. Ships rock in their slips like babies dozing on mother's shoulders. Ropes creak a language of knots and weather. Sailors' hands release and retie in the same motion with the same craft as weavers. Amphorae pass from shoulder to shoulder, their clay bellies bearing stamps that name farms and provinces, Baetica oil, Campanian wine, Egyptian grain. The port smells of pitch, salt, oranges, and rope. It smells, most of all, of the Mediterranean's large, slow breath. A gull challenges the wind and chooses amiable surrender. Sun on the water makes a street of gold no one needs to walk. Night does not fall in Rome, it settles. Lamps are lit with the same small gesture that lights the eyes of those who light them. A bronze mirror on a wall catches a flame and turns it into a second flame. The forum's columns, which held up daylight all afternoon, hold up darkness now as if it were the same useful thing in a different robe. The vigilas begin their rounds. They are not stern and they are not lax. They bring with them a ladder and a polite authority that belongs to stopgaps and buckets, not to swords. Behind shutters, families turn bowls upside down upon crumbs to keep ants from their pleasures and fold cloths over bread to keep morning welcome. Supper asks for a table, not a celebration. A bowl of pulse accepts olive oil with solemn joy. Lentils, which know how to comfort without boasting, cook until they move like a small sea. There is cheese the color of light in wheat stubble, and there are greens that carry the day's sunshine like a memory. If someone brings a plate of figs, the room will pause and smile, because figs make evenings complete. Wine is diluted and becomes conversation's water. Stories travel around the table at an amble, not a trot. Today's market miscounts corrected with laughter. A neighbor's new puppy already learning to sleep in shoes. Talk of the festival next week and whether rosemary or laurel suits the doorway best. When voices drift toward theater, they drift gently. An open-air play repeats an old farce that never needed mending. Laughter rises like birds startled kindly into flight and then comes down again to roost. Masks exaggerate features into friendliness. Actors' gestures are stylized into clarity. Endings arrive like friends arriving late to dinner, apologetic, familiar, forgiven as soon as they put a hand on the door. Across the city, in the circus, the truck holds its long oval of dust. When the teams thunder by in daylight, the colors smear into ribbon. But at night, the spina rests and the gods painted upon it enjoy their own quiet, staring out into a darkness that is similar to the sea. Law here, too, keeps to a slow, reassuring pace. Tablets are read in forums with a voice that knows how to carry without scolding. A magistrate listens as if he were shellac ready to keep a layer of clarity intact over the day's small frictions. Punishments are not a subject for night, order is. Order in the placing of lamps, order in the banking of coals, order in the public clock's last shadow upon stone. If somewhere a stylist disputes a tally and then yields to a better count, that is law doing its most civilized work, clarifying, not crushing. Religion is a calendar as much as a creed. Tomorrow or next week or the week after, Saturn's day will arrive with reeves and laughter and a loosening of chairs at tables so that strangers find themselves among friends. Vesta's fires will be tended with eyes that have learned to see devotion in the steadiness of flame, not the volume of prayer. The Lauras at your doorway, little guardians with their dance steps carved into their hems, accept a pinch of flour and a coin, and they answer by making your threshold a place that recognizes your feet every evening. Beyond Rome, the countryside keeps its agreements. Villas spread themselves upon slopes like wide, low hands. Olives gather their gray grain in terraces that teach hills how to be hospitable. The harvest knows its choreography, blankets spread, branches shaken, fruit pattering down like gentle rain. Press houses smell of leaf and stone. Beam presses sigh as if remembering bodies reclining. Oil streams into amphorae with the patience of ancestry. Each amphora is a promise sealed with wax. In other seasons, grapes rehearse their sweetness along pergolas while children run beneath them with purple on their palms, and the press sings a different song, one with bubbles and laughter in its tune. In far provinces, Gaul with its river-misted fields, Hispania with its orchards braided into the land, Africa with wheat plains that gleam as if the sun were lying down among them, the same rhythm holds. Towns greet the morning with shutters opened like eyelids. The forum bench receives the same storyteller's patience. The bath door receives the same coin. The baker's paddle takes the same simple bow toward the oven's mouth. Languages change, spices change, the angle of roofs against rain changes, but the pace does not. The empire, for all its spans and splendors, hums like a hive that has found a good season. When thought wanders beyond the walls entirely, it finds older roads, older names whispered as one might whisper to a sleeping child. The Parthian princess who kept her vow walks again through a courtyard, water untangling dust from hair with a hiss like kindness. The steppe queen listens for hooves in grass and hears only the breathing of her people as they sleep. The beekeepers lift lids from hives and say good morning in smoke-thin phrases. then share with bees the labor that tastes of dawn. These figures do not intrude upon your night. They visit the way constellations visit a clear sky, interesting if you look, harmless if you close your eyes. Elsewhere, monasteries hold their lamplit scriptoria, where a quill's progress is the measure of hours. A scribe leans a wrist upon a wooden rest worn smooth by his predecessors and draws a letter that looks a little like a reed beside a river. He dots, he crosses, he breathes. Outside, herbs in cloister beds drink dew. A bell speaks, not to demand but to suggest. This is the time when we remember that all times are one time held by mercy. The monk's sandals learn to whisper along stone the way secrets learn to live comfortably in silence. If you would like a sea breeze before sleep, imagine Rhodes or Delos or any island where keys are wrapped around a harbor like arms around a child. The Etesian winds, polite and seasonal, make white triangles of sails bloom across blue. Fishermen mend nets and talk about the moon as if it were a neighbor who sometimes borrows salt. Women rinse linen at the edge of the water and hoist it across lines where it becomes a gallery of flags in no language and all languages. On steps that catch sun, jars of pickled olives keep promises for winter. At night, the water makes a sound that repeats itself forever and never bores the ear. Timekeeping is its own lullaby. Sundials at noon and water clocks at night continue their slow impacts on bowls, drop by drop. A night watch in a city, a shepherd's counting of stars beyond the city, a sailor's reckoning of a wave's breath, the same math written in 3 different hands. Calendars slip their pages from one festival to the next, from one sowing to one reaping. The names of months are a necklace of familiar beads that children learn to finger in the correct order long before they learn to question anything about order at all. When you return to your room, you return to something you have been wearing all along, the city's assurance that ordinary life, taken seriously and done kindly, is more than enough. You wash your hands. The water, barely more than cool, teaches the skin how to be awake and then how to be ready for rest. You straighten the blanket the way a gardener straightens the edge of a bed with 2 fingers and a smile. Your cup is placed rim up to dry. Your comb rests where it always rests, teeth toward the wall, handle toward the door, a small geometry of trust. Breath lengthens. The night gathers itself, not to leap but to lean. Outside, a cartswheel speaks in a voice almost too low to hear and then is gone. Somewhere a door is latched with a kind of punctuation that says, "This sentence is complete." The last lamp in the corridor steals its own flame with 2 small steps, one toward the wick, one toward the lack of wick, and darkness becomes a gentle room rather than a void. Your straw mattress settles under your weight like a meadow making a space for a sleeping deer. Thoughts finish their projects and go home. One stays a little longer, lingering on the market's color, the particular blue of a cup's glaze that seemed to hold a square of sky, the particular green of laurel and shade. Another lingers on the rhythm of the baths, warm, warmer, cool, like a poem of 3 lines you can recite without opening your mouth. Another wonders, idly and without urgency, whether the mason you passed will reuse the marble fragment as a threshold or a bench. Either would be right. All these thoughts put their tools down and hang their aprons neatly on pegs. The room becomes larger than its walls again, part of a building, part of a street, part of a city, part of a world that has arranged itself, for this hour, entirely in your favor. Sleep does not approach. It arrives the way a good friend arrives, already inside, already smiling, already knowing where the cups are kept. You are at the center of a wide, quiet wheel, Rome and its provinces turning around you without jostle, the sea sending and receiving, rivers speaking in their copper voices, hills folding shawls of vineyard and olive, hives exchanging gold for blossoms, roads laying comfort beneath the stalls of strangers and citizens alike. Nothing presses. Everything persuades. If dreams come, let them be the smaller, sweeter kind, the ones that are mostly texture and temperature, the cool of stone under palm, the tiny warmth where a lamp warmed a patch of wall, the soft weight of a cat settling itself upon your feet just as you decided you had no cat. Let there be the sound of reeds rubbing against each other at the river's lip, and the felt knowledge that bakers' ovens are being swept this very moment by hands you will never meet so that morning can arrive on time. And morning will arrive. It always does, even in old cities and older stories. It will press its fingers of light through your small square of window and touch the floorboards the way a mother touches a child's shoulder to wake him for a kindness he forgot was planned. You will rise, and the stair will greet you with its familiar arguable creaks, and the fountain will remember your face, and the bread will crackle, and the market will lift its awnings with the pleased sigh of fabric that has slept well. But that is after. For now, what remains is the ember glow and the long, slow sentence of the world saying, "Be easy." The aqueduct arches walk the horizon of your mind with their same sensible stride. The Lauras at your doorway keep small watch with their carved patience. Somewhere a librarian leans a scroll to rest on a shelf with the care of someone setting down a drowsy child. Somewhere a beekeeper tips a jar to the morning and finds the sun already there. Somewhere a queen in dustless hair nods at a map where all the cities are dots and all the roads are threads, and she chooses, as you choose now, the simplest route into rest. Close your eyes. The city will continue to breathe on your behalf. The night has arranged itself to suit your sleeping. The past has softened itself to fit the palm of your hand. The world has practiced this quiet for 2,000 years, and it is perfect at it. Breathe in. Breathe out. The story holds. The blanket holds. Your heart holds, steady as a fountain in a square that has forgotten every loud thing and remembers only the kindness of water. The ember at the heart of the imagined hearth holds steady, a small sunset close to the floor, giving out a patient light. Our long drift through ages continues without hurry. We are far from trumpets and victories. We are near to the ordinary, to the rooms where evenings end and mornings begin, to the work that returns day after day until it becomes second nature and then becomes comfort. The world outside is quiet and large. The world within is smaller and warmer, and here, at this hour, both agree. The last street sounds have softened. From the lane there is the faint hush of sandals and the soft tap of a stick. From a terrace, a whisper of wicker as someone lifts a basket to a safer place for the night. A cat turns twice and settles. Two low words pass between neighbors, nothing urgent, only the closing clasp of another day. In the square, a fountain continues its faithful sentence. Water leaving height for depth, depth for height again, the cycle that needs no applause. The sky above the roofs is a deep, clean blue that remembers every evening it has ever held, yet belongs only to this one. In a room as modest as a folded cloak, the last task is done with deliberate ease. A bowl is rinsed and turned down so that the morning can find it ready. A cup, still holding the gentlest memory of watered wine, is wiped once and set beside the comb whose teeth are a regular forest along a small ridge of wood. A hand checks the latch. The latch, having performed the same service for years, answers with the same soft decision. The blanket is drawn up to the knees. The straw is that good straw, which yields without complaint and carries the faint scent of a hillside in summer. Everything in this scene has seen this hour before, and it is this familiarity, not any single thing, that makes the room kind. Outside the city, night reaches across fields arranged like calm pages. Furrows keep their lines even in moonlight. A scarecrow keeps its watch with the dignity of an unappointed office. In the orchard, a ladder leans against a tree not because anyone forgot it there, but because leaving it in place saves a breath in the morning. Farther off, the river keeps to its banks and moves its surface with small, quiet decisions. A barge moored to a willow knocks the trunk with a hollow sound like a thought insisting gently on being remembered. 2 taps, a pause, another tap. The reeds breathe and exhale a coolness that moves along the ground like a low, careful animal. The air smells faintly of crushed mint where someone stepped on the path at dusk. If you walk the road at this hour, the mile markers are companions rather than measures. Each stone has a weathered face, mottled with lichens that have their own slow business. The ditches carry their trickles and frogs think they're amphibian thoughts. A hedgehog appears from a hedge and chooses, with admirable care, the next hedge. Barrens along the way, their shutters drawn. Behind the shutters are straw pallets, and on them travelers whose stories will be set aside until morning, stacked like folded clothes. On a hook by a doorway, a key hangs on a loop of cord. The iron is worn smooth by fingers that have turned it without fear for a long time. In towns built by rivers and sea, the night carries a different quiet. Masts shift with a timber sigh. Nets dry in draped silhouettes that suggest wings at rest. On the quay, amphories stand shoulder to shoulder like a regiment that has forgotten parade and learned instead the art of standing still. Salt baskets, white and patient, gather the last of the day's light into a shallow sheen. A pair of fishermen finish a sentence begun hours earlier. They do not mind that it has taken them until now. They bank a small fire into ash and lay a flat stone over it so that a stray breeze cannot find a spark and persuade it into mischief. Above, the stars scatter themselves in the old order, a script the sea has learned by heart. Back in the city, watchmen pass with their lamps. The light they carry is not meant to be seen far, it is meant to be enough. They pause with the same courtesy in front of grand doors and small ones. Their sandals know where the paving stones tilt and where they level. Their hands remember the weight of rope and hook. If a shutter rattles, they lift the latch with 2 fingers and settle it more securely. If a dog lifts its head, they greet it by name, and the dog, having recognized a friend, lays its head down again. There is no rush in their work. There is attention. In a courtyard, lamplight from a kitchen finds the leaves of a bay tree and collectors there, making each leaf shine like a small shield. A woman shifts a pot so that tomorrow morning's fire will catch in the first try. She has understood her hearth so well that the ash holds exactly the right amount of memory. She places a handful of lentils in a bowl of water to swell gently in the night. The water clouds, then clears. A packet of herbs tied with string waits by the door. Thyme, marjoram, a sprig of rue. Her lamplight dims and steadies and goes out. The courtyard keeps the last glimmer for a moment and gives it to the sky. Not far away, in a room lined with shelves, a librarian rests his hand upon a scroll as though to quiet a child. He has just finished copying a passage where a thinker, long dead, recommended moderation and mercy. He has written the words with a neat hand that schemes like a swallow and turns like a swallow too. He cleans the nib of his reed pen upon a rag that has taken the ink of months and turned it into a soft, purple cloud. He wraps the scroll in leather, ties the thong, and returns it to its niche with a care that is the equal of any prayer. The oil in his lamp lowers itself and makes a small sound. He answers by sleeping. The night is not empty. It is full of low work. Bakers rise in the dark and make the day possible for people who will never know their names. Grain sacks loosen a little. Pairs of hands weigh flour by habit, not by measure, and the habit is accurate. A trough receives water, and the husbanding of dough begins. Kneading is what quiet does when it becomes visible. In yards where dyeing is done, that's sleep under lids. The colors do their intimate alchemy in darkness and ask nothing but time. In a stable, a groom strokes a horse's neck once, and the horse sighs and becomes more fully at rest. In a house where someone is ill, the watcher lifts a cup, tilts its rim the exact amount, and places a cool cloth on a brow. The sleeper's breath measures something and finds it acceptable. There are concerns in every age bred to afford, repairs to make, taxes to understand, but they are not the subject of this hour. They have their hours. This hour belongs to the tender, repetitive acts that cause life to continue. We can walk a long way in this quiet and not step on anything breakable. The ground has been arranged with regard. If the mind wishes to wander farther, it can cross a desert without leaving the calm behind. There, at this moment, a caravan sleeps in a ring of tents. Camels kneel and place their thoughts into the sand, which keeps all confidences. The wind has styled the dunes into curves that suggest the movement of music. The people sheltering inside canvas have arranged their goods so that they can reach, in the dark, what they need without knocking anything else. A kettle rests upon a buried coal, making a soft sound that rescues the last heat of the day. The stars in the sky are the same stars a sailor looks at and a shepherd names. Their persistence drapes itself over all distances with a single garment. In a monastery valley, bells have decided not to speak again until cockcrow. The cloister keeps its square of darkness like a pool keeps its water. Herb beds, shorn in neat lines, hold the memory of hands. The well reflects a slice of sky. A scribe who forgot to cap his inkpot wakes and remembers and smiles and goes back to sleep. The walls do what walls do best at night. They make sides to a space and hold the air still so that the people inside can belong without effort. Even the saints in niches seem to lean their heads for rest. Let us pass also by the hives, because their sound teaches the same lesson. In orchards and gardens, straw skeps are domes under moonlight. Inside, the bees hang in a living curtain about their queen, fanning warmth over comb that contains tiny rooms of ordered sweetness. They work while we sleep, and we sleep while they work, and the trade is fair. Their wax waits for morning hands to shape it into tablets and candles. Their honey gathers in slow, amber pools that will become medicine and food and a bright line upon bread. Ancient keepers in many lands learn the trick of smoke and kindness, and those two have always belonged together. A keeper, turning in his bed, dreams that he has found a swarm upon a low branch. He reaches up, and the bees consent to be gently gathered. He wakes with his hands empty and more content than if they were full. He will remember in the morning to repair the slat on the north side skep. There is a city gate, too, that lets wind through its bars. By day, it speaks Latin and the regional tongues. By night, it says very little. Its hinges learned long ago to keep their counsel. Militia posted their lean against the stone and talk in something just louder than thought. One of them eats a figure. Another yawns, ashamed of being alive. A third removes a small pebble from his sandal and places it on the wall where a line of other pebbles has formed over time, like a little garrison of grievances dismissed. A dog they have befriended sleeps under their bench without permission and without objection. If you listen very closely, you can hear the city's clocks, water clocks in guarded rooms. Drop after drop, bowls fill and tip. The little clap each makes is a polite sound that never startles. Somewhere a priest has set a clepsydra to count the watch. Somewhere a philosopher has one on his table to soften his chance of losing whole hours to a thought that would gladly take all of them. Time, here, is a servant in a simple tunic. It moves around the house at night, feeding the fire, closing a shutter, adding a blanket, and then sitting on the step outside until someone needs it again. In another quarter, cloth stretched upon a frame dries in the cool air. The weaver who made it is asleep with a hand open on the coverlet, as if still checking the tension of a warp. Dye has stained her nails in crescent moons. Her loom stands in the next room with its ordered threads like a quiet harp. In yet another house, a mason dreams in right angles, lintel on jamb, arch upon column, course upon course. He sees a wall in his sleep the way a musician hears a melody, and, in the morning, the wall will be there in his sight as if it had walked to meet him during the night. The seasons, too, have their way of being held in darkness. Spring's roots push forward in the soil without show. Seeds crack with such modest sounds that only worms applaud. Summer keeps a reserve of heat in the walls of barns, a banked investment for the cold to spend. Autumn sleeps in granaries behind good doors. The grain changes as slowly as a child turning in a dream, and the weight of it is a comfort the building can feel. Winter lies down over the fields like a clean sheet, no crease, no complaint. Each season carries forward what it owes to the next, and none of them borrow. The mind may wish to collect fragments as one collects shells on a shore, small scenes that belong to the same ocean of quiet. A lamplighter trimming a wick with 2 fingernails. A boy counting the steps to the bath so that he can walk them with his eyes closed tomorrow. An old woman tucking sprigs of lavender into a linen chest so that sheets will remember summer in January. A potter covering a board of unfired bowls with cloth so that the night's cool does not crack them. A father moving a sleeping child from the floor to the bed because the festival wore him out, and then standing for a moment just to listen to that small, sufficient breathing. A teacher awake in his own bed, silently rehearsing the letters he will give tomorrow, as if ordering a garland in his head. There are whispers of older stories that live gently in rooms like this one at this hour. Someone somewhere retells, to a grandchild almost asleep, the vow of a Parthian princess who set vanity aside until peace returned, and how, when peace did return, the washing of her hair was a ceremony not of triumph, but of completion. The child hears only water and kindness and sleeps. In another house, an elder recounts the steadiness of a step queen who would not rush toward rage, and how her campfires were always banked with enough embers to begin the morning without smoke, the listener is comforted and sleeps. In yet another place, a keeper tells how honey, even when sealed in darkness for years, holds a light that can be tasted. The young nod and sleep and dream of jars they have never seen. Before dawn has any color to it, the city begins again. But that is still ahead. For now, the best we can do is list the ordinary things that are readying themselves. In the bakery, a peel leans against a table. Its wooden blade has been sanded so often that it looks like bone. In the smithy, toms lay their cool jaws together as if asleep, point to point. In the market, awnings are rolled tight like sleeping cats on lintels. On the riverbank, poles used to steady barges rest in V's made by the forked trunks of two low trees. One pole has a notch carved by a bored hand, and the notch has filled with rain and holds a square of sky. In the baths, a slave on the early watch adds a basket of olive pits to the furnace, and the new heat wakes the stone like a warm hand on a shoulder. In the magistrate's office, the wax tablets are stacked in order under a scrap of cloth against dust. The top one, which carries the list of names for tomorrow's petitions, has a faint thumbprint impressed over the final letter. A human seal of unintended sincerity. If sleep has yet to lay a complete claim on you, let the mind flow wider still, because width is restful. There are coasts farther west, where the ocean learns to behave like a wide river and then decides, after all, to be an ocean again. There, fishermen know the weight of their nets before they haul them, and their guess is always within a basket. There are terraces on the hills southward, where vines are tied, the same knot on every plant, so that when wind lifts the leaves it tells each tendril the same story. There are plains farther east, where wheat lifts and settles under the touch of weather the way geese lift and settle upon a pond. From the road, the field appears to breathe. There are islands scattered along a bright sea, each keeping its harbor under the protection of a saint or a memory or both. Town squares with a single olive tree, stairs down to water where children will learn to swim by watching older cousins. Steps up to chapels that hold a sliver of bone in a glass, as if it were the axis of a tiny universe. None of these places requires you to move. They can come to you like pictures on the inside of your eyelids. The tools of the world, at rest, deserve their naming. The shuttle, its nose worn smooth, sleeps under the loom's lowest beam. The awl, which knows both leather and patience, lies in its cloth roll like a fine knife in a picnic. The plumb line hangs without a tremble from a nail beside a column in the mason's yard. Gravity and string make their small pact in silence. The stylus waits upon a folded cloth near the scribe's elbow, as if it might stir and write, on its own, the word rest. The broom leans in a corner, a marriage of twigs and twine, and looks dignified enough to be invited to sit. The amphora stopper, sealed with wax, holds its sweet secrets in a clay throat. The wax is thumb-smoothed. The clay carries fingerprints from hands that were not trying to sign anything and signed anyway. We may allow dawn to send its emissaries now. First, a cooler draft beneath the door. Then, a change in the blackness at the window to a color that is not yet color, but is definitely not black. The rooster in someone's yard speaks once and, hearing no contradiction, speaks again more confidently. In courtyards, ropes creak as laundry lines accept the day's first weight. A woman opens a jar of honey and the small circle of gold inside recognizes the light and answers it. A boy lifts a bucket from the well and pauses, listening to the rope's slow wet rub across stone. The watchman meets his replacement and passes the hook and the gentle list of things that did not happen. The city's first open shutter brings a rectangle of day into a room like a picture hung perfectly level. A baker's first loaf comes out of the oven. The crust sings its fine crackling song, that most civilized applause. The fountain forgets that it ever sounded like night and resumes sounding like morning. Nothing has changed. Everything has shifted. At the baths, steam meets chill air and forms a small white animal that vanishes and reforms and vanishes again. The librarian returns to his room and unties a thang and begins where he left off. The thought he copies is patient and receives his hand as if no night separated them. Work resumes, but it is not a resumption from zero. Each craft picks up the thread it laid down without losing a stitch. The mason places his level, and the bubble finds the middle as easily as a bird finds a branch. The weaver sets her shuttle moving, and the shed opens and closes like a breath. The beekeeper lifts the skep's lids and hears the inside sound made by health. The potter tests a rim with the pat of a finger and knows without looking whether it will take the glaze like a friend or be persuaded first with a little more smoothing. The mother measures out a child's porridge with the same spoon her mother used, and the child's mouth opens like a small gate that does not yet know doors. The magistrate's clerk looks at the list and draws a neat dot beside each name to keep place. Each dot is a kindness given to the future. The pace is the point. There is no need to supply excitement. Over centuries, such mornings made cities and fields, rooms and roads, habits and hopes. Aqueducts kept walking their arches, roads kept laying down flat sentences of stone, ships kept showing up with cargoes that smelled of distance, hives kept turning blossoms into a currency sweeter and more stable than silver. Scrolls kept being copied so that one mind could meet another long after both were at rest. This is why the hard days in those ages did not undo everything. The quiet work was the spine, and it did not break. Our story could finish anywhere, but it is kind to let it settle where it began, in a room that knows you. The blanket, warmed now by an hour of night and a little morning, accepts your weight as you consider rising or not. On the sill, the square of sky shows a color that changes even as you look. You breathe, and the room answers. You think of water, and the city says yes. You think of bread, and the oven says soon. You think of work, and your tools say ready. You think of rest, and the bed says still here. Before you stand, let the mind make one last slow tour of what it has learned to love in the dark. The good latch, the comb with all its teeth, the cup set right side up, the hush that does not accuse, the thoroughness of small acts, the balance of seasons. The ease with which the old stories found their way to a new hour, the way ancient bees and old aqueducts, desert roads and city steps, Palermo figs and Egyptian honey, Parthian vows and Roman mornings all belong to the same great patience. None of it is rushing, none of it is lost. And if tonight or some other night you return again to the ember and the quiet room, the city will know you and make space. The fountain will keep its place in the sentence. The watchman will nod. The baker will turn a loaf with a proud wrist. The librarian will smooth a page with the side of his hand. A child will run under the arcades with a fig in each palm. And a cat will occupy the exact circle of sunlight without apology. The hive will hum. The road will consider the distance and accept it, and the night will gather and let go as softly as breathing. Now the ember is a pearl of light, enough for the last line and no more. The blanket learns the shape of your shoulder again. The city beyond the wall rehearses the new day quietly. If you wish, you may close your eyes and let the long, measured story keep moving without you for a while, because that is what good stories and good cities do. They continue. They wait. They welcome you back at whatever hour you wake, with water that walks toward your hands, with bread that remembers fields, with work that knows your name, with rest that does not need permission, and with an old, kind light that holds steady until you arrive.